E. Don't block them, don't beg, just do this and watch what happens. Have you noticed how people start respecting your silence the moment they can no longer control your reaction? Not when you explain. Not when you plead. Not when you write the perfect last message at 1:14 in the morning and stare at the screen, waiting for those 3 dots to appear. No. The shift happens when you stop performing your pain for an audience that was never loyal to you in the first place. Because most people are not confused. They are watching. Measuring. Testing how much access they still have to your emotions. And in a world built on appearances, where attention is traded like currency and affection is often given only when it is convenient, the person who cannot be emotionally manipulated becomes impossible to ignore. In this video, I am going to walk you through 10 powerful Stoic lessons on what to do when someone pulls away, goes cold, rejects you, betrays you, or leaves you in silence. Not from the angle of revenge, and not from the angle of pretending you do not care, but from the deeper place where self-respect is rebuilt. And stay with me, because near the end, I will show you the mistake most people make when they think they are moving on, when in truth, they are still emotionally kneeling. Let us be honest. Very few things disturb the human mind like being ignored by someone who once felt close. It does something strange to your nervous system. You reach for your phone without thinking. You reopen old messages. You replay conversations you have already replayed 100 times. One part of you wants dignity. Another part of you wants relief. So you start bargaining with yourself. Should I text? Should I block them? Should I say one final thing so they understand what they did? Should I disappear first before they disappear completely? And that is where most people lose themselves. Not in the breakup. Not in the betrayal. Not even in the rejection. They lose themselves in the reaction. Stoicism teaches something brutal, but freeing. Your peace begins the moment you stop negotiating with reality. Machiavelli, in his own darker way, understood something similar about human nature. People often respond less to what is true than to what is displayed. That is why public emotion is so often exploited. The world is full of masks, signals, half-truths, selective kindness, and convenient loyalty. Many people will comfort you only as long as your pain does not threaten their position. Many will call your desperation love, because your desperation makes them feel powerful. So this video is not about becoming cold. It is about becoming clear. We are going to move through 10 lessons. First, how to accept what happened without collapsing under it. Then how to detach without hardening your heart. Then how to move forward, rebuild identity, master emotional control, let silence speak, turn pain into growth, stop resisting reality, create closure from within, and finally, reach the kind of indifference that makes manipulation powerless. Lesson 1: Accept reality instead of fighting it. The first wound is what happened. The second wound is your refusal to admit that it happened. A breakup hurts. Being ignored hurts. Watching someone go from warmth to distance as if your history meant nothing hurts. But what keeps people trapped is not only the event. It is the internal war against the event. It is waking up and saying, "This cannot be real." It is spending entire days trying to reverse what has already revealed itself. It is trying to edit reality because your heart is still attached to an older version of the story. Marcus Aurelius said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." Realize this, and you will find strength. That line matters because it cuts through fantasy. You do not control their loyalty. You do not control their timing. You do not control whether they choose you, remember you, or regret losing you. What you do control is whether you keep wounding yourself by arguing with what is already in front of you. Think of the person who checks the phone every 7 minutes, then tells themselves they are just being patient. Think of the person who writes a paragraph, deletes it, writes another, sends it, regrets it, then spends the next day feeling smaller. Think of the person who blocks someone not from peace, but from the hope that the other person will notice and come back with urgency. That is not acceptance. That is pain wearing a strategy. Acceptance is quieter than that. Acceptance says, this happened. I may not like it. I may not approve of it. I may still feel shattered by it. But I will not lie to myself about it. The moment you do that, your suffering changes shape. It becomes grief instead of chaos. And grief, unlike chaos, can heal. Lesson 2, detachment is not coldness, it is strength. A lot of people are afraid of detachment because they confuse it with emotional death. They think detachment means becoming numb, careless, robotic, unreachable. But that is not Stoic detachment. Real detachment is not the absence of feeling. It is the refusal to drown in feeling. Seneca wrote, "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality." Look at how true that is. Often, the deepest torment is not even what the other person did. It is the movie your mind keeps directing after the fact. Who are they with? Are they happier now? Did I mean nothing? Are they treating someone else better? Did they ever love me, or was I just convenient until I became difficult? That is imagination turning pain into a kingdom. Detachment interrupts that kingdom. It lets you stand on the riverbank and watch emotion move through you without building a house inside the flood. You can miss them and still not chase. You can feel disappointment and still not break your own boundaries. You can care deeply and still refuse to hand someone the keys to your inner stability. And this matters, especially in a performative society. Many people have learned to read attachment as permission. The more visibly shaken you are, the more leverage they believe they have. The more your mood depends on them, the more important they feel. Some people do not love your heart. They love the evidence that your heart can still be summoned. Detachment takes that power away. Lesson 3, true strength is moving forward without looking back. Moving forward does not mean forgetting. It means refusing to build your identity around what ended. There are people who spend years revisiting one chapter because it feels safer than writing the next one. They say they are processing, but really, they are living in an emotional museum. Every object is preserved. Every memory is dusted. Every old wound is kept under perfect lighting. But life does not reward permanent spectatorship. The past can inform you, but it cannot become your home. Every time you keep turning around to ask why they left, why they changed, why they did not choose you, you keep placing your future under the authority of a closed door. And here is the hard truth, sometimes there is no final explanation profound enough to satisfy a wounded heart. Sometimes the answer is simply that they were not built for the kind of loyalty you were willing to give. Sometimes they were fragmented, performative, immature, selfish, scared, or convenient with love. Sometimes they liked your presence, but not your depth. Sometimes they wanted access without responsibility. You do not need to stare at that door forever. Walking forward while still hurting is one of the purest forms of strength. It is what people rarely see when they speak casually about moving on. Real movement is not glamorous. It is making breakfast when your chest still feels heavy. It is going to work after a sleepless night. It is answering messages, paying bills, lifting weight, taking a walk, reading a page, breathing through the hour, and refusing to let private pain turn into public collapse. That is strength. Quiet, unphotographed, and real. Lesson 4, rebuild your identity. When someone leaves, it can feel like they took part of your identity with them. Not only because you miss them, but because your routines, expectations, and self-image had slowly wrapped themselves around their presence. Suddenly, the day feels strangely empty. The future feels misnamed. Even the version of you that existed with them becomes difficult to locate. That is why this stage matters so much. Seneca advised us to begin living immediately and to treat each day as a complete life. That is not just philosophy. It is a survival instruction. You have to rebuild the self that was overinvested in being chosen. Maybe you stopped creating because you were consumed by the relationship. Maybe you abandoned old dreams because your emotional energy was always going toward one person's moods. Maybe you became an analyst of signals instead of a builder of your own life. This is where the reconstruction begins. Read again. Train again. Work again. Pray again. Create again. Call the friend you disappeared from. Return to the room in yourself that you left unattended while trying to keep someone else comfortable. Think of a sculptor. When stone is cut, it looks violent at first. But the removal is what reveals the form. In the same way, losing someone can expose where you were unfinished, where you were dependent, where you were shrinking, where you had mistaken attachment for identity. This is not just recovery. This is revelation. Lesson 5, Emotional control is the ultimate freedom. Every time you react impulsively, you hand somebody else a report on how to control you. That is why emotional control is not a soft skill. It is power. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself constantly that the mind can remain sovereign even when the world around it becomes unstable. That principle matters most when rejection, silence, or betrayal tempts you to perform emotion in a way you later regret. You know the moments I mean. The overlong voice note. The final paragraph that was supposed to give closure, but really exposed the depth of your wound. The impulsive post meant for them to see. The attempt to look unaffected while secretly checking whether they viewed it. The sudden swing between anger and longing. Most people are not destroyed by emotion itself. They are destroyed by undisciplined expression. Emotional control does not mean suppressing everything until you become hollow. It means creating space between the feeling and the action. It means saying, yes, I am hurt, but I will not make a permanent decision from a temporary storm. I will not let pain use my hands. I will not let humiliation write my script for me. In a fake world, overreaction is often encouraged because it creates spectacle. But spectacle is not strength. Spectacle is exposure. The mountain does not become powerful by shouting at the storm. It becomes powerful by remaining itself while the storm exhausts its violence. Be that mountain. Lesson 6, Let silence speak louder than words. There is a kind of silence that comes from fear, and there is a kind that comes from command. The silence I am talking about is not passive. It is deliberate. It is the silence of a person who no longer believes that their dignity must be explained in order to exist. Most people speak too much when they feel powerless. They explain, defend, over-clarify, over-justify, over-communicate. They think one more message will make the other person finally understand. But usually, what it does is lower the floor of self-respect 1 inch at a time. Seneca once wrote that if a man does not know to which port he sails, no wind is favorable. In moments like this, silence becomes the port. It protects direction. Silence is powerful because it does not beg for interpretation. It creates space. It reveals patterns. It lets you see whether someone values your presence or merely expects your availability. It also unsettles people who were counting on emotional access. When your reaction disappears, the illusion of their control often disappears with it. Picture a candle in a dark room. If you keep striking at the flame, you kill it. If you protect it, it keeps burning. Your inner life works the same way. Not every message deserves a response. Not every provocation deserves your energy. Not every absence deserves your collapse. Sometimes the strongest sentence is no sentence at all. Lesson 7, The best response is personal growth. If you want to reclaim power after loss, become difficult to recognize in the best possible way. Not because you are trying to make them jealous. Not because you are staging a comeback for witnesses. But because pain should not be wasted. Adversity, Seneca believed, tests and strengthens character. Hardship reveals whether a person is ruled by appetite, fear, ego, resentment, or discipline. So when someone leaves, the real question is not only, what did I lose? The deeper question is, what can this loss force me to become? This is where many people choose one of two paths. One path is obsession. They stalk, compare, replay, and slowly reduce themselves to a shadow of the person they were before the wound. The other path is refinement. They take the humiliation, the loneliness, the disillusionment, and turn it into structure. They become more focused, more disciplined, more selective, more honest, more sovereign. And here is the irony: when you truly begin growing, you stop needing the audience that once felt so important. The approval you wanted becomes irrelevant because your life is no longer organized around being seen. Growth changes the architecture of desire. That is why personal growth is such a devastating response to betrayal. It is not loud. It does not announce itself. But it makes the old version of you inaccessible. Lesson 8: Peace is found in acceptance, not resistance. The more you try to force life into your preferred script, the more exhausted you become. People leave. Plans collapse. Promises are broken. Timelines shift. Affection cools. Masks fall. The modern mind wants control over all of it. It wants certainty, guarantees, proof, reassurance, closure, visible loyalty, immediate answers. But life keeps refusing that contract. And when you fight every unwelcome reality as if it should not exist, you create a second prison inside the first one. Stoicism offers a different path. Instead of asking, "How do I stop this from happening?" it asks, "How do I meet what is happening without losing myself?" That shift is enormous. Because once you stop arguing with the fact that life contains loss, your nervous system begins to soften. You stop living in a permanent defensive posture. You stop needing every situation to validate your worth. You stop interpreting every departure as evidence that you are unlovable. Some people come into your life for a season. Some are teachers disguised as disappointments. Some reveal where your boundaries were weak. Some expose the fantasy you were living in. Accepting that does not make you passive. It makes you sane. Lesson 9: Stop seeking closure from those who benefited from your confusion. This one is difficult, because the mind is addicted to unfinished stories. It wants the apology, the explanation, the confession. The moment of clarity where the other person finally says exactly what happened and why, and somehow your pain reorganizes itself into peace. But closure is often delayed by the very people who helped create the wound. Why? Because confusion gives them room. If you do not fully understand where you stand, they can still return when convenient. They can still keep a thread attached to your attention. They can still enjoy emotional access without emotional responsibility. That is why waiting for closure from others is so dangerous. Marcus Aurelius warned against spending life arguing over what a good person should be. Be one. The same logic applies here. Do not wait forever for a proper ending from people who were careless with the middle. Make your own ending. That might mean accepting you will never hear the truth in a satisfying form. It might mean admitting that their silence was the answer. It might mean understanding that the apology you want would not actually heal you, because what hurts most is not missing their words, it is grieving what you thought they were. Some stories do end mid-sentence. But your life is not the sentence. Your life is the book. Lesson 10: The power of indifference. Indifference, in the Stoic sense, is not cruelty. It is liberation. It is the calm state in which other people's inconsistency no longer has authority over your inner weather. It is the moment when you finally understand that your worth was never hidden inside their attention. It is the moment when their choices stop feeling like a verdict on your value. Seneca speaks often about the freedom that comes when we stop being ruled by externals. That freedom is what indifference gives you. Not an empty coldness. Not bitterness. Not emotional paralysis. But a steady, peaceful immunity to manipulation. This is the place where the social theater loses its magic. The fake concern. The strategic return. The half-hearted message. The breadcrumb of attention. The sudden warmth after distance. The vague apology with no accountability. The little emotional hooks designed to see whether you are still available. At one time, all of that might have pulled you in. Now it simply passes through your awareness and finds nothing to grip. That is power. Because once somebody can no longer control your hope, they can no longer control your behavior. So let us bring this together. Do not block them out of wounded pride. Do not beg from emotional hunger. Do not confuse reaction with strength. Accept reality. Detach without becoming cold. Move forward without worshipping the past. Rebuild your identity. Master your emotions. Let silence protect your dignity. Turn loss into growth. Stop resisting what life has already revealed. Create closure from within. And rise into indifference, the kind that ends manipulation without needing revenge. If there is one truth beneath all of this, it is simple: your power returns the moment you stop laying it at the feet of people who were careless with your heart. And here is the mistake I told you I would return to. Many people think they are moving on because they stopped texting, stopped calling, stopped looking. But inside, they are still waiting to be chosen. Still hoping to be noticed. Still imagining the day the other person finally understands their value. That is not freedom. That is invisible begging. Real freedom begins when your healing is no longer a performance directed at the person who hurt you. It becomes private. Grounded. Unadvertised. It belongs to you. If this spoke to something real in you, let me know in the comments, which of these 10 lessons hit you the hardest: acceptance, silence, closure, or indifference. And if you are ready for a deeper kind of strength, subscribe and stay close. This channel is for people who are done performing pain for a false world and ready to build a quieter kind of power. Until next time, stay disciplined, stay clear, and protect your peace.